School bully lays hands on the wrong black girl. 10 seconds later he regrets it in front of everyone. The hallways of Lincoln High School buzzed with the usual chaos of teenagers rushing between classes. Lockers slammed, laughter echoed, and snippets of conversation blended into a steady hum. But beneath this everyday noise, there was an undercurrent, a subtle tension woven into the fabric of the school's culture. Whispers passed like shadows, and eyes sometimes avoided meeting. It was the kind of unspoken divide that didn't need to be said aloud. The invisible walls built by prejudice and old stereotypes. Here, race wasn't always shouted, but it lingered quietly, shaping interactions and attitudes in ways that few dared to challenge. Jasmine Carter moved through the crowd with a calm confidence. Tall and poised, her dark curls framed a face that held both warmth and determination. She carried herself like someone who knew her worth without needing to announce it. Jasmine's sharp eyes scanned the hallway briefly, reflecting a mind always curious, always alert. She was the kind of student teachers noticed, not just for her grades, which were among the best in her grade, but for the quiet strength she radiated. Books were her refuge and her power. She dreamed of college, of a future where her voice could be heard loud and clear. On the other side of the hall, Ryan Matthews swaggered forward with that familiar sneer curling on his lips. He was a senior, tall and broad-shouldered, with an air of entitlement that made it clear he ruled these halls. Ryan was the classic bully, confident, aggressive, and ruthless in his need to dominate. What made him especially feared was his disdain for anyone who didn't fit his narrow idea of who belonged, particularly students like Jasmine. His glances were cold, dismissive, often laced with cruel jokes and biting sarcasm directed at those he deemed weaker or different. Today, Ryan's attention was focused on a younger student, Marcus, a shy boy who tried to keep his head down. Ryan caught sight of him by the lockers, and a malicious grin spread across his face. "Hey, Marcus," Ryan called out loudly, causing heads to turn. "Didn't know they let you use the bathroom during class. You slacking off again?" His voice dripped with mockery. Marcus's face flushed, and he mumbled a weak excuse. But Ryan wasn't done. He stepped closer, invading Marcus's personal space. "What's the matter? Too scared to say anything back?" A few students nearby laughed nervously, uncertain whether to intervene or keep watching. The tension thickened the air. From across the hallway, Jasmine caught sight of the scene. She hesitated for a moment, then pushed through the crowd, her steps purposeful. Just as Ryan leaned in to shove Marcus, Jasmine's voice cut through the noise. "Back off, Ryan." It was calm but firm, leaving no room for argument. Ryan's eyes snapped to Jasmine, surprise flashing across his face before hardening into irritation. "Oh, look who decided to show up," he sneered, the big mouth. His stance shifted, ready for confrontation. Before the situation escalated, Maya Lewis appeared beside Jasmine, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. Maya's smile was reassuring, her presence a silent promise that Jasmine wouldn't face this alone. Their friendship was a shield and a source of strength in a school where allies were precious. As whispers swirled around them, the fragile peace held for now. But beneath the surface, the lines were being drawn. The quiet tension between Jasmine and Ryan was no accident. It was the beginning of a battle that would shake the school's very foundations. The next morning, the air at Lincoln High felt different. Word about what had happened near the lockers spread quickly. And though no punches had been thrown, the confrontation between Jasmine Carter and Ryan Matthews had left an imprint. Students whispered about it between classes. Some admired Jasmine's courage, others warned her she didn't know what she was getting into. Jasmine, however, wasn't fazed. She sat in her third-period history class, focused on her notes as Mr. Thompson lectured on the civil rights movement. Her pen moved steadily, but her mind was alert. Part of her always was. Across the room, Ryan slouched in his seat, arms crossed, eyes flickering to Jasmine with something between contempt and curiosity. When the teacher asked a question about systemic inequality, Jasmine raised her hand. She answered calmly, articulating her thoughts about generational injustice and how it still shaped modern society. A few students nodded. Ryan muttered something under his breath, just loud enough for those nearby to hear. "Oh please," he scoffed. "Here we go again. Blame everything on the system, right?" The room grew tense. Jasmine didn't flinch. She turned slightly in her seat and met his gaze across the room. "Some of us don't have the luxury of ignoring the system," she replied evenly. "We live in it every day." Mr. Thompson cleared his throat, attempting to steer the discussion back to the lesson. But the damage was done. The line had been drawn, in front of everyone. After class, Maya caught up with Jasmine by the vending machines. "You okay?" she asked, her voice low but steady. Jasmine gave a tired smile. "Yeah, I've dealt with worse." They sat down on a bench near the courtyard, their lunches unopened in their laps. The sun filtered through the trees. And for a moment, the world felt still. "You ever feel like people are just waiting for you to slip up?" Jasmine said, her voice quiet but sharp. Maya nodded. "All the time." Jasmine continued. "In middle school, I got detention for defending myself after a kid called me a name. Teacher didn't care what he said. Just saw me raise my voice and decided I was the problem. That's when I realized, it's not always about fairness. Sometimes it's just about power." There was a pause. "I promised myself that day I wouldn't let anyone define me by how they see me." She added, "Not ever again." Back inside, Ryan leaned against a locker, texting on his phone. His jaw clenched when he saw Jasmine pass. He didn't understand her. Her calmness infuriated him. She didn't back down. She didn't even get angry like he expected. Ryan wasn't always like this. There was a time, years ago, when he was quiet. Even awkward. But growing up in a household where strength was measured by dominance and emotions were weaknesses, he learned quickly how to survive. His older brother had been the golden child, tough, popular, and unapologetically cruel. When Ryan couldn't keep up, he was mocked, even at home, so he built armor, arrogance, aggression, control, especially over those who reminded him of how small he used to feel. Especially anyone who didn't know their place. Later that week, in biology class, Ryan deliberately bumped into Jasmine's desk as he walked by. Her textbook fell to the floor with a thud. "Oops," he said with a smirk. Jasmine didn't even blink. She picked up her book, looked him in the eye, and said, "Try harder next time." Laughter rippled from the back of the room. A few students exchanged looks, some amused, some impressed. Jasmine's calm had become her weapon. After school, in the library, Jasmine sat surrounded by a small group of classmates, Maya, Devin, Layla, and Jordan. They weren't exactly a clique, but something was forming. They all had stories, microaggressions, slurs, stares, unfair detentions, or silent erasure. They shared those experiences over study sessions and cafeteria lunches. Not for pity, but for clarity and strength. "That guy's not used to people calling him out," Jordan said, "especially not someone smarter than him. He's going to push harder." Layla warned. "Then let him," Jasmine replied. "I'm not going anywhere. Outside those walls." Ryan watched from a distance. For the first time, he realized something he hadn't expected. Jasmine wasn't alone. And worse for him, she wasn't afraid. It was Friday. The energy at Lincoln High was buzzing with that particular electricity that only came before a long weekend. Students were more restless than usual, teachers more lenient, and the hallways more crowded with people dragging their feet to the final bell. Jasmine was headed to her locker when she saw Ryan leaning against it. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't joking. There was no audience this time, at least not yet. "Excuse me," Jasmine said, stopping a few feet away from him. Ryan didn't move. "What's your problem with me?" she asked plainly. "My problem?" he repeated, stepping forward. "You don't know when to shut your mouth. That's my problem." She held his gaze. "Or maybe you're just not used to being called out." For a moment, his expression faltered. Then something flickered in his eyes, something darker. He took another step toward her, close enough that she could smell the cheap cologne mixed with anger. "You think you're better than me?" he hissed. "With your big words and your attitude? I think I don't owe you fear." Jasmine replied coolly. And then, he shoved her. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't a tap. It was a full, open-palmed push against her shoulder that sent her stumbling back into the row of lockers with a metallic clang. Gasps echoed around the hallway as students turned. Some instinctively reached for their phones. Others froze. But Jasmine didn't fall. She caught herself against the locker and stood back up slowly. Her face unreadable. Inside, her heart was pounding, but not with fear. It was the sound of a dam cracking, of every insult and every slight crashing into the present moment. But she didn't let that chaos show. She stepped forward, not to hit him, not to scream, but to stand. And she did, right in front of him. Chin lifted, eyes steady. "Touch me again," she said softly, "and you'll regret it more than you already do." Ryan stared at her, stunned. He had expected her to cry, to run, to collapse under the weight of his dominance. But she was still there, stronger, taller somehow, and entirely unshaken. Around them, the crowd grew. Maya pushed her way to the front, fury etched across her face. But Jasmine subtly raised a hand. "Don't." Mr. Thompson appeared seconds later, alerted by the commotion. His eyes took in the scene, the phones, the tension, the silence. "What's going on here?" he asked sharply. No one spoke, but all eyes were on Ryan. His hands still slightly raised, his breathing uneven. Guilt hung on him like sweat. "Jasmine?" Mr. Thompson asked gently. She nodded. "I'm okay." He turned to Ryan. "My office. Now." As Ryan was escorted away, he glanced back, once. But the look in his eyes wasn't victory. It was confusion. Jasmine had broken something in him, not his bones, but his control. The students didn't cheer. Some looked uncomfortable. Others quietly nodded to Jasmine as she passed. A few still whispered in corners, uncertain which side they should be on. But she had stood her ground. Later that day, Jasmine sat quietly with Maya under the old oak tree behind the school. Her shoulder still ached slightly, but her spirit didn't. "You didn't even flinch," Maya said, shaking her head. "I wanted to," Jasmine admitted, "but then I remembered, he wants fear. He feeds on it." "Well, you starved him today," Maya said, grinning. Jasmine didn't smile back, not fully. The battle wasn't over, but a crack had opened in the wall, and through it, the light was beginning to pour. It happened fast. 10 seconds. That's all it took to change everything. The next confrontation wasn't in a hallway or a classroom. It was the cafeteria, packed, loud, unfiltered, the perfect stage for humiliation. Ryan stood at the center with his friends around him, laughing too loudly at something no one really found funny. Jasmine walked past, her tray balanced, eyes forward. He couldn't resist. "Hey Jasmine," Ryan called out, his voice cut through the noise like a blade. She didn't stop. "Still think you're better than everyone?" he added, louder now, baiting her in front of at least 50 students. She turned, slowly. "I don't think I'm better," she said, "just not afraid of you." Laughter and silence collided in the air. Then Ryan stepped forward again. Too fast this time. He grabbed the edge of her tray, not violently, but enough to make it wobble, and leaned in. "Let me help you find your place." It was the last mistake you would make. In one fluid motion, Jasmine shifted her weight, dropped her tray to the floor deliberately, and grabbed Ryan's wrist. She wasn't trained, but she didn't need to be. She used his size and momentum against him. A swift step forward, a twist, his arm bent back awkwardly. He stumbled, and then, he was on the ground. It wasn't brutal. It wasn't even violent. It was tactical. Jasmine had simply outmaneuvered him with calm, calculated precision. The room went still. 10 seconds. Ryan looked up from the floor, eyes wide with disbelief. Jasmine stood above him, unmoving, her breath steady. No fear, no rage, just a presence so solid it silenced the room. A voice rang out from the back. "Yo, did she just?" She dropped him like nothing. Another said. Students started standing. Phones were out again, but this time, they weren't filming a victim, they were filming a reckoning. And Ryan, still dazed, saw the realization settle across the faces around him. His image, invincible, untouchable, was cracking right there on the linoleum. Jasmine stepped back, gave him space, and said only one thing. "Think before you put your hands on people." Ryan didn't respond, couldn't. He got up slowly, humiliated, brushing crumbs from his shirt as if that would somehow fix what had just happened. The lunchroom was alive now, buzzing not with cruelty but with awe. Whispers turned to open conversations. "I didn't know she could do that. He deserved it." She didn't even get mad, just handled it. Maya rushed to Jasmine's side, eyes wide. "What did you just do?" "What I had to," Jasmine said. And that was it. 10 seconds. Jasmine had flipped the power dynamic on its head, not with fists or fury, but with clarity, timing, and confidence. Ryan's face burned with shame. Not from pain, but from knowing he'd been beaten in front of everyone, not just physically, but socially, intellectually, publicly. His friends didn't laugh anymore. Some stepped back. Others just watched, unsure how to defend him now. The teachers arrived late, of course. Order was restored. Words like incident, report, and supervision were thrown around. But the moment had already happened. In 10 seconds, Jasmine had turned a predator into a lesson. And everyone saw it. The Monday after the cafeteria incident felt different. The energy at Lincoln High was no longer buzzing with tension, it pulsed with change. The video had gone viral, at least within the school. Every student had seen it by now. Ryan on the floor, stunned, and Jasmine standing tall above him, calm and composed. There were no punches, no screaming, just silence, strategy, and strength. Some called her a hero, others, a threat, but everyone had something to say. The halls were filled with whispers, nods, and eyes that followed Jasmine wherever she walked. Some students clapped when she passed by. Others just gave a respectful nod, as if silently acknowledging that something real had shifted. In third period English, a group of students waited until the teacher stepped out to approach her. "Hey," one of them, Luis, said. "That was incredible. I've never seen anyone stand up to Ryan like that. You spoke for all of us." Another girl added, "We've all been watching him get away with it for years." Jasmine smiled softly, humbled. "I wasn't trying to make a scene." "Exactly," Luis said. "That's why it worked." But not everyone was applauding. In the faculty lounge, the debate had already begun. She should have come to a teacher. Mr. Jenkins argued, "Violence is still violence." She didn't strike him. Mrs. Patel replied. She neutralized the situation. "There's a difference. It's a PR nightmare." The vice principal muttered, "Parents will be calling." Back in the principal's office, Ryan sat slouched in a chair, his jaw tight, his face still red from the sting of humiliation more than the fall. Principal Green looked at him sternly. "You've had multiple reports against you this semester. Ryan, we've ignored too many warning signs. This time, we can't." Ryan didn't respond. "You'll serve 2 weeks of in-school suspension. And we'll be contacting your parents. But more than that, you're going to attend the restorative justice meetings we're holding. And you will listen." Ryan opened his mouth as if to argue, then stopped. He nodded. Once, the damage to his reputation was already done. In the halls, people no longer moved aside when he walked through. His own friends kept their distance. He wasn't feared anymore. He was exposed. Meanwhile, Jasmine sat with Maya and their small but growing circle at lunch. "It's been crazy," Jasmine admitted. "I didn't think it would become all this." "You're not just Jasmine anymore." Maya grinned. "You're the Jasmine." "She's right," Devin said. "You gave people a voice. You made it okay to speak up." But Jasmine also noticed the new shadows. A few students glared at her. Mostly ones who had ridden the coattails of Ryan's bullying or were used to the silence of the status quo. One girl from the cheer squad whispered too loudly, "She's not even tough. Just lucky." But Jasmine didn't rise to it. Not anymore. Her strength didn't come from fighting, it came from knowing when not to. Later that week, the school held a discussion forum titled, "Justice and Equality at Lincoln High." It wasn't perfect. Some students rolled their eyes. Others stayed home, but many showed up. Jasmine was invited to speak. So was Ryan. Jasmine stood in front of her peers and told the truth. About the years of being overlooked. Of being called angry when she was passionate. Intimidating when she was confident. About always having to prove herself twice as hard for half the credit. She didn't cry. She didn't accuse. She just told her story. When Ryan spoke, his voice was quieter than usual. He admitted he had been raised to believe certain things. To expect power. To feel entitled to fear. He said he had never been forced to face his own actions until now. No one clapped, but no one booed either. That, in itself, was progress. Afterward, as the students filed out, Jasmine stood by the doorway. Ryan passed her, paused for a second, and nodded. "Thank you," he said. Jasmine raised an eyebrow. "For what?" "For showing me who I was." Then he walked away. Maya wrapped an arm around Jasmine's shoulder as they stepped outside. The sun had started to set, casting golden streaks across the courtyard. "You okay?" Maya asked. "I think so," Jasmine replied, for the first time in a long time. And as they walked side by side down the steps, the sound of their laughter cut through the shadows of a school that, slowly, had started to wake up. Spring arrived slowly. Like the school itself was learning how to breathe again. There were no parades or banners for Jasmine Carter. No trophies handed out. But what bloomed in the silence was deeper than applause. It was change, subtle, messy, but real. Posters appeared on bulletin boards. Diversity Dialogue Club. A teacher offered a new elective focused on civil rights and social justice. Students who had once stood in the background now spoke up in class. And in the spaces where laughter used to cover cruelty, there was room for truth. Jasmine sat under the old maple tree by the courtyard, the same one she passed every day. But now it felt different. She had her notebook open, scribbling ideas for her valedictorian speech. Even though she wasn't a senior yet. Old habits. Maya joined her, as always, a smoothie in one hand and a teasing smile on her lips. Still saving the world through metaphors? Jasmine laughed, trying. She paused, looked up at the branches above. You know, she said, I used to think being strong meant staying quiet. That if I just kept my head down and worked twice as hard, things would eventually get better. They didn't, Maya said gently. No, Jasmine agreed. They didn't. Not until I stopped apologizing for being seen. She thought of Ryan, of how he nodded at her in the hallway now, not with friendship, but with recognition. That was enough. I didn't want to be anyone's symbol. She added, I just wanted to feel safe being myself. And somehow, Maya said, you became both. In the weeks since the incident, Jasmine had received messages from students she barely knew. You made me feel seen. You reminded me not to stay silent. You're the reason I spoke to my counselor. They didn't always say it out loud in the halls, but she felt the shift. The teachers noticed it too. Mr. Jenkins no longer interrupted when Jasmine raised her hand. Ms. Alvarez asked her to lead a discussion group on student rights. Even Principal Green started his staff meeting with a quote Jasmine once posted on the school forum. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting anyway. Now, as the sun dipped behind the school roof, Jasmine looked out across the courtyard and saw a place that still had problems, but also possibilities. You ever think about what comes next? Maya asked. All the time. She smiled. College, law school maybe, definitely more writing, and probably more fighting, not with fists, but with truth. Sounds like a plan. Maya nodded. Just promise me one thing. What's that? Don't forget who you are. Jasmine closed her notebook. I couldn't if I tried. As the final bell echoed faintly in the distance, students filtered out, some stopping to say hi to Jasmine, some offering a nod of quiet respect. She didn't need a crowd. She had her voice. And now, she had proof it mattered. The sky turned lavender as they walked home, side by side, and somewhere between the laughter, the stories, and the dreams, a new beginning had already begun, not just for Jasmine, but for every student who had ever felt small, unseen, or silenced. Because now, they knew, you didn't have to scream to be powerful. You didn't have to fight to be heard. You just had to stand, once, firmly, and the world would shift. And maybe, just maybe, others would rise with you. If this story moved you, don't let it stop here. Stand up, speak out, be the voice for those still unheard. And if you believe in justice, courage, and the power of truth, like, share, and subscribe for more stories that matter. Your voice can change the story. Thank you for listening.